This is an SM Media production.
Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of The Betting Ring right here on SM Media. I'm Scott McPike. It's an absolute pleasure to be your host as always for our regular horse racing show, and it is a pleasure as always to be joined by the one and only from the Scottish Daily Mail, Calum McClurkin.
Hi there, all good, yeah. Looking forward to Royal Ascot, one of the best sporting weeks of the whole year. So it's going to be very, very exciting. Good foreign representation. Nothing from Japan, unfortunately, but there's horses from America, Hong Kong, Australia coming over. So and we should be getting decent ground, even though thunderstorms are in the kind of vicinity of the place. So I think it'll be a very, very good meeting.
Yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to it as well. It's going to be a very fascinating week. I would say, obviously, a lot of people will say Cheltenham's the best week of the year. I think for kind of betting heats, I don't think you'll find a better week in racing. I think it's not like Cheltenham where there's odds on shots all the time. This, I think, every race is a proper betting region. Yeah,
and I think with Cheltenham, like we do our show, I mean, you've got a general kind of handling of what's going to come over and what it's going to be like. You know, even and you've probably got a better idea about next season's Gold Cup than kind of like, you know, your average 2-year-old race here, even at this point, going a week forward. So, it comes on you suddenly. But I mean, horses have got to kind of like, you know, prove themselves in guineas and derbies and things like that around it. So there's plenty to go on from then. More form representation, bit more of a global reach than the flat game does. So it is a really important week in the calendar. As a Cheltenham, I think Cheltenham probably offers a bit more thrills, a bit more kind of, you know, long term view into it. But well, this is kind of more kind of like really short term, really kind of race by race stuff, and it's also a day longer, so there's more opportunity to either go for it, or there's more opportunity kind of, well, if you don't like 2-year-old races or betting on them, then you can just sit back, be informed, and maybe take something out of it down the line. Then there's a lot of different ways you can approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we'll get into like first before we the plan is to preview in depth all the Group 1 races. We're going to take a look at the 2-year-olds and the other kind of big races over the week. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we don't have any kind of major cards yet. We'll preview the kind of races we know. But the plan is to look at all the big races and then cover the 2-year-olds, and then we'll have some handicaps at the end. Just a quick one, top trainer and top jockey. We do this for every big festival. Top trainer will start with Aidan O'Brien 11-10, John Gosden 5-2, Charlie Appleby 7-2, Andrew Balding 7-1. Top jockey Ryan Moore's even money. You've got Frankie Dettori 2-1 and William Buick 3-1. That very open in terms of the. Obviously, you've got the dream team of Moore and O'Brien 15-8 combined to be the top trainer and jockey. Is that value?
I think they're probably the correct combination, but they won't have that many handicap entries, will they? The O'Brien's, and then Ryan Moore will. He's going to get these good rides. He's jocked up in the 2 of Willie Mullins's for the first day, you know. So yeah, Ryan Moore's top rider, probably a better bet than Aidan O'Brien top trainer, I would say. Frankie Dettori is obviously the man of Ascot. I mean, he does transcend this meeting, given it's going to be his last. He's going to definitely be in the winners' enclosure. But his record in handicap company isn't as strong as it would be in the group races. So, yeah, I would say top jockey would probably be Ryan Moore, and I think top trainer would still likely to be John Gosden, given the graded company there. But I think Ryan Moore might have kind of more better chances at the handicaps to kind of overtake Frankie Dettori in the jockey's title.
I think I'm going to go for Frankie top jockey in the Gosden partnership as the top trainer. I can just see a dream week, his final week. Do you know what I mean? That kind of fairy tale.
Yeah.
I could see that being an option. I think the Gosdens have got a lot of good chances as well, as we'll get into kind of later on. But it's shaping up to a really interesting week, and we'll start off the Tuesday. I always think the Tuesday's the best day, as it is with kind of most meetings. First race, obviously, the opener, the Queen Anne Stakes, over a mile. Just to betting, Modern Games 13-8, Inspiral 15-8, Native Trail 11-2. You've got Chindit at 10-1, Mustabik 12-1, 25-1 bar. Modern Games, obviously the Lockins winner, has shown real improvement since winning the Breeders' Cup. Inspiral, obviously not ran since our disappointment at Ascot in the Champion Stakes. Native Trail could be the outsider, I think, but it's shaping up to be a good start.
It's a competitive race, sometimes, we'd buy last year, Palace Pier 2 years before that, just take it out odds on and kind of move on to the next one. This will be quite competitive. The market's going to be informative beforehand. There's only £1 that splits Modern Games and Inspiral at the top of the market. I think it's Inspiral, if they all brought their A game, I think Inspiral would win. But I think Modern Games is remarkably more consistent and probably more reliable. But, off the back of a reappearance as well, if the betting vibes are strong with Inspiral, Gosden and Dettori teaming up already, I think they probably will be popular. I think she'd probably go off favourite. And as long as there's a strong pace for her team and she's in top form, I think she is the best of these. I think she does have that kind of star quality that Modern Games doesn't quite have, but he's definitely going to run to his mark of 1-2-1. So Inspiral's got to be on her game. Philly's allowance might help her to beat him. Native Trail, really good horse as well. Has to come back to form, but he's got a really high class kind of 3-year-old form from last year. Brings that right into the equation. Mutasabik, very good miler. He's bang there in ratings. He'd be the one each way you might be interested in.
I think he's a good bet at 12s.
Yeah, particularly if it's soft enough up front. The problem I ask is it's going to be a stiff mile, and if he gets taken on, then he's probably not going to stay like he did in the Lockins. Lockins kind of, it maybe revealed that he does have a ceiling to his ability, but if you look at pure ratings, he could be the one for third, but you're probably going to get 4 places on the day, so you might be able to kind of, find an each way angle, from somewhere. But out the two of the market's going to be very informative, and if it's positive for Inspiral, then I would probably side with her. If it's not, in Modern Games is still a solid 74-2-1 shot, he's definitely going to run his race, so he'll probably beat Inspiral. But again, you'll be looking at kind of the market on the day to kind of really split the top two, because it's that tight.
What about it's obviously now it's good to firm, but there is talk of thunderstorms. It could change completely in a whim, as we've seen in the past. How important is that ground factor going to be? It's the same every meeting, but you've obviously got the impact of potential thunderstorms. Right now, it's probably shaping up kind of good to firm, probably the exact weather we want for a Royal Ascot, but it could just change in a whim.
Oh yeah, and it's so important. Some horses just simply don't go on it, and the margins are a lot finer at top level flat racing than it is in top level jumps. So all these variables, you've got to check out the draw as well. Where you're drawing near a pace angle, or are you out in the wing, or are you in the middle? And then sometimes there can be track biases as well, where it's quicker on one side and softer on the other. So yeah, it's really, really important. And we'll try our best and find some bets, but without that information of ground and the day and the draw, even the final declarations, it's pretty hard to kind of home in kind of on horses that you really, really like, and you'd commit to have a bet to right now, particularly when you probably have decent terms and maybe even better terms on the day. So yeah, you can definitely afford to wait. I think everyone's just kind of assessing things, looking at things, drawing up shortlists rather than kind of fully committing at the moment.
Last year, we saw Inspiral win the Coronation Stakes the way she did. I thought she was brilliant that day. She was pretty much kind of flawless apart from that run at Ascot in the last day. She obviously won in France as well and good to soft. I just think I agree with you. If she comes back to what we saw kind of this time last year, I think she's the best horse. Modern Games, just don't think, I know consistency-wise, star power, I'm just thinking, is he as good as Inspiral is on his best day? Native Trail, I think, is the one that could be the kind of upset. Really like Mustabik each way. I think he could potentially be overpriced at 12-1 if he's in his best day, but I think it's 2 votes for Inspiral if she's in her A game.
Presuming it should be in her A game, yeah. But again, the market would probably be more informative of her well-being on the day.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move into the Kingston Stakes, one of the best minutes of racing of the year. 5 furlong sprint. We've got Highfield Princess for John Quinn at 5-2. the Australian Raider Calum McClurkin 3-1 for James McDonald's going to be on board. Dramatised, obviously, a course and distance winner at 5-1. Cannonball, another Australian Raider, and Frankie Dettori will ride Mannequin at 8-1, 16-1 bar. Always a good race, always the class race. The class horse wins the race. We saw last year the Australian Raider. I really like Calum McClurkin here.
Yeah, I don't think he's a nature strip in his peak. Nature strip last year was, breathtaking. Personally, I thought it was a highlight of the meeting last year. It was a proper kind of sprinting performance. It evokes a kind of like black caviar stuff like that and things like that. Australian sprinters will automatically gain a lot of respect. And I think if he does run to that level, getting the 3-year-old allowance. He was getting a lot of concessions that day on that run in Australia. If you're looking back, where the nature strip kind of bombed out, he's not quite been the same, funnily enough, since Royal Ascot, and he was 8 at the time of winning. He doesn't get any concessions here, and this is tougher. I think Highfield Princess ran a perfectly respectable race last time out. She's probably coming to form, and with the Americans in there as well, and the Australians, there should be a strong pace for her to kind of just buck out handy and sit in and then pounce. I think she's the right favourite, and I think she'll probably be overtaken by favouritism by the Australian horse, and then that's when you get involved. Yeah. I can see her going out to 41.92. I think she's been the most consistent sprinter in the last 12 months in Europe anyway. I think she's a one to beat.
What about Dramatised? Obviously, won really well at Haydock a couple of weeks ago. That was really good, kind of good to firm ground at Haydock, which we very rarely see. 5-1. Should they be a bit further on the market? Should she? Sorry.
She won the Queen Mary last year. Wasn't a strong renewal, and looked pretty forward in the Temple, where draw did kind of play a big hand that day. I think she needs to step up a little bit. It does get a few concessions. It's not beyond her, but I think she's short enough. As is Mannequin, for what he's achieved at that level. I know Frankie's on board, but I think that's one of these Dettori rides that are a little bit over bet. It's just kind of a free ride, and he could run well. It's a King Stand. It's a sprinter. There's not a lot of difference between them in the ratings, but I do think that the third and fourth of the market are a little bit short.
So we're kind of leaning towards. I'm going with the Australian Raider. You're going with Highfield Princess.
I would go with Highfield Princess. Twilight Gleaming's quite interesting each week. I know it's in I Ride Ortiz on and Wesley Ward, and they might bomb out, but there is signs that horse is getting better. Mm-hmm. Has some form in America that would get you in the picture here. If he's drawn right in a quick reel, for instance, it'd be quite hard to peg back. So as we saw with like Naval Crown in the Jubilee, if you're even drawn against the rail and it works out for you, and you can set your own fractions and be relatively unpestered, it can work out. So I'd watch that American horse each way potentially. Yeah.
So we're going to move on to the 3-year-old St James's Palace Stakes. We've got the two Guineas winner. We've got the English one, Shaldine 2-1 for Frankie Dettori and Andrew Balding. Paddington, obviously, for Moore and O'Brien at 2-1 as well, joint favourites. Cicero's Gift, obviously a really impressive winner last time out for Charlie Hills, a horse Charlie Hills has raved about anytime you've seen an interview. Mustabshire for the Gosdens. You've got Isaac Shelby. Royal Scotsman 14-1 as well. Probably quite overpriced. We'll get your thoughts on that. I know it's a horse you like, but out the three at the top of the market, who are you leaning towards?
None of them. I like Mustabshire a lot.
Okay.
For the Gosdens, I mean, they do this all the time. I mean, Palace Pier kind of had a kind of low kind of prep, didn't he, when he won it? And skipping these classics, sometimes it's not a bad thing. Just a horse finds its feet and continues to improve. I thought he was very, very good at York, and it kind of proved. He just had the mark of 95 that he could have comfortably blown up to 108 now. I think there's tremendous upside. I don't think either bits of the classic form are particularly impressive. And I think, he's of similar appeal to the third favourite, but you're getting twice the price. And John Gosden's team are significantly improving at this time of the season, and the horse is doing likewise. So I would be backing him.
I really like Cicero's Gift. I think he's potentially the most impressive performance we've seen this year from a novice. I loved it at Goodwood the last time, beating Kilsyth. I thought was quite unlucky in the race at Epsom a couple of weeks ago. Would give him a massive chance. I think he has to improve. Paddington is probably the one out of the two at the top of the market, I would say, is the best. I liked his performance despite it, because he dwelt the start, hung badly left. I just think that this could potentially, Cicero's gift at 4-1 against the top two in the betting, I think could potentially be a good bet. Royal Scotsman's a big price at 14-1.
Yeah, but that Irish effort was disappointing, and he did run really well and again he's the wrong side. The Colts are confident of getting back. Each way he's definitely a bit big in comparison to maybe Chaldine on form, because he was on the wrong side that day and made up a lot of ground. He doesn't win very often, but he has now an each way price at this level. So yeah, I can see him running well. I'd probably prefer Metabs here. There's just about enough juice in the price, but you've got Isaac Shelby as well there, second in the French guineas. So you've got the French, Irish, and English guineas all represented in form.
Yeah, so I'm going to go for Cicero's gift, and you're a big fan of Metabs here. Let's move into Wednesday. Big race on the Wednesday is the Prince of Wales Stakes. Luxembourg 2-1. Adiyar 9-4. My Prospero 7-2. Baybridge 4-1. 16-1 bar. Really good race. I think this is probably one of the races of the week.
Yeah, assuming that they all go now, would have been better if Desert Crown was here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's not quite made it. They're all kind of low mid 120 horses at this trip and this level. The one I'm leaning towards right now is My Prospero.
Yeah, I'm going to have as well.
Of William Haggis's, because I think there's just a bit more potential to be unlocked with him over this trip. A mile's been a bit unsuitable for him recently, showing lock-ins where he was fourth. Yard weren't flying at that time. They're in a bit better form now. William Haggis normally gets quite a lot of improvement in horses going from 3 to 4, and he looks like one of them. The vibes have been relatively strong, and as long as it stays rattling fast ground, I think he could maybe do Luxembourg and Adiyar for a bit of speed, because they shape to me as more kind of, well, they don't quicken, they're solid gallopers. They might take each other on from a long way out down this long Ascot straight, and something where a bit of zip can come and call them. It could be My Prospero. Baybridge isn't out of it. So presuming he goes, he will need a bit of cutting the ground. It's an unlucky second in a good race behind Luxembourg earlier this season. And Luxembourg has still improved, but he doesn't quite back up his races as perhaps he should do. Adiyar, he's threatening to look a bit exposed, and I think 1.5 miles probably suits him. I think they're trying to get some kind of Group 1 black type win at 10 furlongs. I don't think this will be for him. I can see him being outpaced. So I mean, they could all be finished with a blanket in the end, and tactics and how things shape out. But I think My Prospero would be out of the leading quartet, the one I would like the most.
Yeah, I think he showed in the lock-ins a step up would do him no harm. I think the problem I've got with Luxembourg is I really like the horse, but he kind of got a soft lead in the Gold Cup the last time. I think, is he going to get that here? You've got Adiyar could potentially, as you say, kind of there could be a dust up as well. You could have something like maybe like a Baybridge, just kind of sitting wide. It depends how the draw goes, of course. But I just think My Prospero is the one out these kind of four that is the least in terms of exposure. I think the lock-ins run was really good. I think the step up will do him no harm, and I think 2 votes for My Prospero here.
I think so. I mean, Luxembourg doesn't need to be. I mean, Bolshoi Bally's in there. He's definitely 1.5 miles horse. So, I mean, you'd be looking at maybe him just blasting out and making it a stamina test, because that is what they want. They probably don't want to do each other in too early on. The market leaders, you would need a very kind of waiting, very patient ride. And My Prospero did that last week at York with Cecil Road, I think. Sela Rosa, horses like that. I mean, patiently can come up. Susceptible trip-wise, but if they overdo it and they don't sit too close to those fractions, you can do them for speed at the end. And Ascot can reward that when the pace collapses.
Yeah, so 2 votes for My Prospero. Let's move into Thursday. The big race is the Gold Cup over 2 mile 4 furlongs. No Caprios, which we'll get into in a second, but Eldar Eldarov leads the market 11-4. Coltrane, obviously a winner last year at Royal Ascot, 3-1. Emily Dickinson, 6s. You've got Courage Monami at 8s. Broom at 10s, along with Subjectivist. Yiber 12-1. An old favourite of yours in Echoes and Rain at 14s, 20-1. The likes of Trushan. I know Caprios, you loved Caprios. I remember you saying last year that you thought it was an art horse. It doesn't look the best Gold Cup, does it?
No, it's an open one. There's a lot of different angles here. I mean, there's the solid horse and Coltrane at the top. You've got the Ledger winner stepping up in class and Eldarov. You've also got Emily Dickinson coming up in class. A bit to prove, but it means she's still quite useful at the tail end of her career. And even Brian Steers never going to be dismissed. And then you've got the best horse in the race is Subjectivist at 10-1, because he's had a long layoff and he won this 2 years ago in a wildly impressive fashion, as good as Stradivarius, as good as Oliver St George, or as good as Big Ons, even as good as Kyprios, I would say, in recent times. He ran perfectly well back in Medan in March, when a returning third. He'll stay this trip, which is doubtful for a lot of these. He'll love fast ground, which looks like he's going to get. He doesn't need to lead. He can just sit off whoever's going to lead it and take it up and really run a kind of strong final half mile. He's very boom or bust. You have to say. I mean, there are a lot of question marks about, is he going to really be at the top of his game? That Medan run was on a par with most of these. Really, he needed it. They get a big mid-race move as well out wide. He was the only one as well that was kind of up there, that kind of stayed there and kept plodding on. He's a better 2.5 mile horse than the 2 mile horse. So yeah, I think he's definitely the bet at the moment. The prices, if they come in with him, Steve, if you know that he's sound, he's going to be backed in at 4-5-1.
Think so?
Definitely, it's the best horse in this race by a street.
What do we think of, obviously, Eldarov, obviously St Ledger winner? Coltrane has done nothing wrong, but I kind of think that maybe is he maybe going to need a bit softer ground to be seen at best effect. I know he won last year beating Bring On the Right in the Ascot Stakes, but after that he's never really showed that. It's always been kind of soft ground where you've seen him to best effect.
He's a very good horse. I mean, he won second Champions Day behind Trushan on the soft ground, which is as good form as he'd possibly be up there, winning Sagaro comfortably when the yard weren't really in any great deal of form at the time. And he's won Doncaster Cups and the trip's not there. It's solid. It's just he's not world class. He might not need to be, and that's why he's favourite. He's a very, very good stayer, and he does merit a lot of respect. This trip, finding an Ascot Stakes, this is up in grade, and this might be a bit tougher for him, but he's a very hardy horse that's going to run his race, and he's not going to be outside the top 4 in this company. You get Eldarov, who probably is more ground concerned slightly than Coltrane. Yorkshire Cup run was good. I mean, it was decent. It was a decent return. He was running on. It's a big step up from winning. Not the strongest ledger in the world, I wouldn't think.
No.
But he did shape well. He's going to improve for his York run. He'll be bang there. He might want a bit of cut in the ground, but you are going up from 1 mile 6 to straight to 2 mile 4. There's no kind of 2 mile interim kind of stepping stone for him. So it is a big leap, but he's automatically progressive one in this field. So I mean, if you're looking at the progressive angle, I think Subjectivist is done at the top level. Then yeah, he's definitely the one that people are going to latch onto. If you don't rate the Ledger form, you're probably just going to back Coltrane because he's other solid horse in the race.
I'm struggling with this. I'm not going to lie. Yabir, I think, is probably a bit kind of too erratic for me to back. Broom, again, can be very boom or bust. I don't have a strong opinion in this race at all. I don't fancy Emily Dickinson. I don't think she's shown enough to be 6-1. Trushan, could I just go at a price and just hope he comes back to his best? This is the one race of the week I'm really struggling with.
I mean, with Trushan, it's ground.
Yeah.
He needs it softer. I think he's, on the downgrade anyway. Yabir's interesting going up and trip. But this is 2.5 miles, not 2 miles. It's the same problem that Broom's got. who won that race in Maidan. The subjectives was third. I mean, if you're playing it was 3:41 subjectives, you'd be a bit doubtful. There's so many question marks around here. Best horse in the race, if they all turn up when their best subjectives wins this by about 6 lengths. So I mean, I would back him at 10s, and and hope that he is that force of old that he was.
Yeah, so I'm going to sit on the fence here. You are very much in the subjectivist camp. Let's move into Friday. We've got the Commonwealth Cup. I think that's a pretty good race, actually. Little Big Bear is 13-8. Sakia 4-1. We've got Shaquille 9-1. The Antarctic, Lazoo at 10s and 12-1 bar. Little Big Bear, obviously very disappointing. The Guineas, but bounced back really well a few weeks ago at Haydock. What do you think of him at 13-8 in this race? Do you go with or do you take him on?
Well, again, you'd be waiting for final declarations, because I mean, if your Noble Styles, defect and go to a Jersey Stakes, for instance, then I think it'd be pretty significant that there's running scale of the favourite. I respect Sakir. I think he's a really good horse, though. I really don't think it's going to be a complete walkover, and grounds could they play a factor in that. The Guineas was poor, but it was too far from soft ground. He finished lame. The Sandy Lane was an encouraging return, bit of a penalty kick from on form. But he's an imposing horse. He looks the part, and he's beginning to kind of fulfil that in his 2-year-old days. Says that he is. So he's shaping as if he's coming back to Group 1 form. I'd imagine this has been probably more of a target from the outset than a Guineas. And I do think he's going to be very, very hard to beat. And I think it's probably the 3-year-old race where Ian O'Brien's pinning his hopes on the most this week. So I'd expect him win. Is he not much of a price? Maybe not, but I do respect Sakir. I think he has a big, big danger.
I do think Little Big Bear could potentially just be the class angle here, but Shaquille the last day, what he had to go through to win that race, won it well over 2 lengths, beating I think a decent horse of Andrew Baldwin's, and Moore had a good one in it as well. Obviously, Noble Style was in it. There's a few good horses that horse is beating, and obviously, Julie Camacho seems to rave about him as well. I just think at 9-1, Shaquille could be a good each way bet.
It wouldn't be for me, to be honest. I think he's got tons to find. He's rated 102. That was the race that Noble Style just simply didn't turn up in after the Guineas. And that, for me, that kind of pinned it back a little bit. Julie Camacho's yards in great form, and there's obviously more to come. I do think this is a lot tougher. I think you're going into proven, Group 1 territory here. I think it's short enough. If Noble Style turns up, I even think he kind of shaped particularly well. He's still £9 clear of Shaquille, even off the back of that bad run. So it's whether they go here or go to the Jersey, which Charlie Appleby's like, because they like winning the last 2. So he's probably in each way angle. Lazoo's got high class 2-year-old form. Might want a bit more cut in the ground, but he has one good to firm in King George Day last season at Ascot, so he can't be forgotten about. These are mid 1-1, 4 or 5 horses that are like 14-20-1 because of the presence and the respect of the favourites. So and Al Dassin was brilliant in Maidan at 20s for George Boy. So at the start of the season, so I mean, he's not without a chance. It's a really strong race. There's good depth to this. Marshman was favourite for it. He's still here at 20-1 after this one bad run. You could put that behind at this level. So there's a lot of dangers. It's one I would wait to kind of see the day yet. If Little Big Bear is head and shoulders above them by the end, then he'd certainly have earned it. He does look like he is. He's definitely the biggest and strongest horse in the race. He has bombed out before, so wait and see. But yeah, and Sakia ran really well. Again, his 7th didn't stay. Patently successful run. He was the wrong way. He was drawn the wrong side with Royal Scotsman as well. But at least he quickened, showed a bit of speed, showed a bit of class, and he was a big talking horse last year. So there's lots to consider in this. The draw is going to be important, and the ground's going to be important. I'd expect Little Big Bear to win, but there's plenty of dangers. Yeah,
so I think we're both in the Little Big Bear camp. I would go Shaquille each way, and you like Sakia. Let's move into the Coronation Stakes, the 3-year-old fillies race. We've got Tahira at 4-5, the 1,000 Guineas winner Modge at 5-2, Meditate and Queen for You 8-1 and 10-1 bar. This is obviously a rematch between the the 1,000 guineas. Tahira obviously looked really good last time out, obviously winning in Ireland. Do you think they're the right price, the two of them?
You probably should be a bit closer in the betting, maybe. I think it's just that kind of Tahira's got a lot more potential, and I think she's beginning to fulfil that out. But she's had a hard run in the Irish Guineas in the interim, where Moj can come in kind of fresh. Ground's going to be important as well. Quicker it is, the better for Tahira. The softer it is, the more it'll suit Moj. And you've got Queen for You, who brings an alternate angle from classic form into it. A bit to find in the raw figures, but I mean it's a John Gosden horse in a Coronation Stakes at 8-10 to 1. It really can't be too sniffed at. And Meditate's a consistent, fairly reliable horse at 8s that they'd probably prefer coming round the bend than they have at the Curragh and Newmarket before. Like she did in the Breeders' Cup. I think that might suit her coming off there. She's not out of it. She could close the gap, only beaten with 1.5 lengths in the Irish Guineas. So yeah, it's really hard to look beyond those top 4 as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's hard to see past Tahira. Obviously, I think she's very much inspired. If she fulfills her potential, I think she wins this. Moj, again, has done nothing wrong. Brilliant ride last time to win the Guineas, but Meditate at 8 to 1, I think could just be a really good each way bet. I think this will suit her a lot better. She was, how many Aidan O'Brien horses were in form at Newmarket? I think showed a lot better last time out. I think she'll certainly want to kind of keep her card. She led probably too early in the race in Ireland. I think at 8 to 1, I would just side with her at an each way bet.
It's an each way cop out. I mean, Queen for You is exactly the same. Again, I think wait until the draw in the market comes out for me, but we'll do, and the ground's going to be important to split the front to the market. I mean, if it's soft, Moj becomes a bet because she's got the best form on soft ground and will like it out the top 4. So yeah, it's kind of wait and see. But if it was a thunder shower 30 minutes before the off and it turned it into good to soft, then Moj would become like out of probably the 4 that I don't like the most, the one that I do like the most, because ground's that important. So yeah, it's one I can leave alone till the day.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's probably one I would say, yeah, Meditate just at an each way price. Final Group 1 race on the Saturday is the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes. Very much an Australian head of the market. You've got Artorias at 4 to 1. Wellington 6s. Best of the British looks to be sacred at 15 to 2. You've got Art Power and Kinross at 10 to 1, 12 to 1 bar. I'm not going to lie, this is one race I will probably just let you speak because I know very little about the top 2 in the market.
I'll have a go at it. I mean, Artorias was third last year, and it's apparently an improved model, and was very unlucky when Jamie Spencer didn't get a run. The race at Naval Crown won.
Naval Crown, yeah.
Godolphin had the top 2 that were drawn on either side. He's obviously going to be buying there. He was 3 last year, he's now 4. He should be stronger. Tough to beat. There is a good word about Wellington from Hong Kong, and a really, strong sprint there. That has been kind of well back from 14s into 6s. So they obviously rate that. And the Highfield Princess, it's very hard to double up the King stand in this. You can do it in a week here. Blue Point did it. It's very hard to do. I do think this. I think the King stand's a weaker race, and I think she's definitely got more of a chance in that. Just sitting tracking off the pace. I think this is going to be a bit tougher, and it's even going to be more tougher. Just 4 days off the back of what you've done at King stand, so it'll be very difficult. Sacred each way is solid. I think bringing a 5-year-old filly back for to stay in flat training is an interesting move, and there must be reasons behind it. Yes, she's more of a 7 furlong horse, but if the Aussie and New York and American contingent again overdo it a little bit, there's no problem staying 7 in a 6 furlong race in the straight at Ascot. She will need quick ground, but it's likely to happen. She was very good at Lingfield in return. I thought, came widest round the bend, asserted really well. I would like to see it a bit bigger than 9s, but I think the market kind of respects it as a solid each way option, as is Kinross if it turns soft, because he's another that's highly rated. He's back from his reappearance run though, so I mean, you are thinking that maybe a Lennox Stakes at Goodwood's kind of more of a kind of interim target, and the ground for him. He's probably best, needing a bit of cutting the ground, but he did run well in this last year. Again, he was another kind of staying on type. You've got Art Power who won at the Curragh, quite well.
Is he a big price because that was his first win in a while? Because that at 10-1 the way he won the last time at the Curragh would be quite big for me.
He is, but you wouldn't associate the Irish with strong sprinters. And he does tend to go well over there. And it was a lesser race. He has won at Ascot before, Timmy said he does have the odd kind of really good top class sprinter in his yard. So on figures, he's not a million miles away. I think he'd be more 16s than 11s, 12s, particularly if the money's coming for the top Aussie market. You've got the Woking winner the last twice in Rohan taking his chance as well. So, Alistair Hale's trying to do it for Godolphin. I think Maidan probably not similar level of sprinting form to Hong Kong, Australia, top end European stuff, but he does have a mark of 1:18, and if he runs to that, he's in the thick of things. So plenty to consider. Whether kind of nailed down to a bet or not, you probably couldn't, because the draw will matter.
Yeah.
And being, if Artorius was drawn right next to kind of somebody who'd be making the speed, then it's going to help. It's going to point you towards Artorius. Wellington could be a different level. Very reliable in Hong Kong, only beaten by a handful of players. He's kind of second, third all the time. There is one high class, sprinter there that keeps beating them all over there. But his RPRs are as good as Artorius's. He's definitely in the frame. So the market's moving a lot right now. It's going to move even more informatively later on when we get the final declarations and the draw. But I would think Wellington probably at the moment would be for me. The surge of interest and money in him looks more significant than it is with Artorius, who was favourite because he did the best last year and the top two aren't here, and he was a bit unlucky. So I would maybe side with Wellington because he might have better continental form in the book.
Yep, I'm going to go with you for that because I don't really know enough about this race to have a go, but it looks like Wellington could be something special. Will we do Tuesday, Wednesday, kind of the other races, and then we'll look at maybe a wider kind of look at Thursday, Friday, Saturday? We've got not declarations, but we've got enough to know what potentially is going to run in the Tuesday, Wednesday. Coventry Stakes, two really exciting 2-year-olds are top of the market in this race over 6 furlongs. You've got River to Bear for O'Brien at 7-4. As Dana, who looked really good on debut at 2-1. These two could be quite special.
Yeah, and the money's coming for River Tiber over Azadna at the moment. The George Boy horse completely broke the clock on debut.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of respect when River Tiber stepped up in the 6 furlongs. Looks going to be like the making of him. Probably the best O'Brien juvenile around at the moment. And George Boy's an upcoming trainer that certainly knows what's going on. So they ran 30 days ago together identically. So there's not a lot in it. The market's beginning to lean towards the O'Brien horse. I marginally preferred him as well, but whether it should be 7-4 versus 4-1 would be another matter. Frankie Dettori's booked to give me the beat boys for Jessica Harrington at 8-1. He'd be interesting. And one of the best horses that I've seen in air for years on debut was Army Ethos, for Holly Doyle and Archie Watson, who won this last year with the same ownership in Bradsell. He looked a bit big in the paddock beforehand. He then, he was kind of caught wide and out the back, switched around them, then swished back through them again, and then quickened onto the line pretty impressively. Holly Doyle said it's the most exciting juvenile that she's going to ride this summer. I think there's a bundle to come. Raw figures, yeah, there's a fair bit to find. You're talking about the best part of a stone to kind of maybe compete with the top two, but there was a lot of progress there, and that horse won't be the only one here that's open to bundles of improvement to win. That's why going in heavy and short priced horses, 2-year-olds is a dangerous kind of business. I liked Army Ethos, and I think 16-20-1 it's not too bad each way.
Yeah, could be very interesting. I think there's a lot of chat regarding the top two. So again, I think this is one just obviously to wait to the day and just see what the market says. Wednesday, we've got the Queen Mary Stakes, obviously for 2-year-old fillies. It looks like it's been headed by Born to Rock at 4-1 for Jane Chapel High and William Buick booked on board. You've got the likes of Beautiful Diamond. Midnight Affair is about 7-1, 6-1. Wesley Ward is sending over Bungeon. Joe Rosario going to be on board. Don't know a lot about these. Born to Rock, I was quite impressed with her first time out. Don't really know enough about many more in the race, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, you've got one run to really go on. I mean, the two highlights got to Love Agree, who I thought was pretty good at York, winning it quickly and could go on soft ground at Nottingham. I mean, it was two kind of solid 2-year-old run. I mean, yeah, she might not be the most progressive in the world, but I don't think it's a strong race. I think she's quite hardy and quite reliable. Has pace. 10-1, I think, it's pretty fair each way. And the other one was would have been Midnight Affair. Won Hillary Needler well at Beverley from the outside. Yeah, there was a couple of skirmishes in between, but she's barely been off the bridle, this horse. And Richard Fye says there's tons to come, potentially. It's an 11-day run around. That's a bit quick, but she wasn't asked to really do a serious amount. Justified odds on favouritism quite well. Clipper Logistics won this last year with Dramatised. I think 10s with Richard Fye's yard, juveniles, particularly now coming into solid form. I think she's pretty interesting as well. The Americans could give them a toe into it. With Joe Rosario on board rather than Arad Ortiz, that is a suggestion that horse can be ridden a bit more patiently than normal. Arad's kind of more a kind of point and shoot. Well,
yeah,
Joe Rosario is kind of more considered as kind of being a bit more patient, a bit more hold up jockey, so she may be more tactical, versatile than just an automatic pace angle. And they've won it, with Lady Aurelia, things like that. Wesley Ward normally runs, quite a good one there. So, but yeah, I would say with the two that I mentioned, particularly Midnight Affair, as a strong kind of potentially upside horse, and the solid one would be Got to Love a Grey of Carol Bucks. Both 10-1 mark would do me at the moment.
Very good. We'll move into the Duke of Cambridge Stakes. Group 2 for fillies and mares, 1 mile. Jumbly for new trainer Joseph O'Brien looked quite good last time, finishing second at the Curragh behind Just Beautiful for I think Billy Lee was on board that. Laurel 3-1 looks to be the amount of Frankie Dettori. You've got Prosperous Voyage 6-1, 14-1 bar. Jumbly, I think, could be the one here, obviously, as that was a good horse for Roger Charrett when his move trainer. Looked good first time out this season. I think she could be quite good here.
She's the one that seems to be coming to hand for this the best. The Curragh run looked like a prep for this. She does have things to find on bare figures with Laurel and Prosperous Voyage, and £7 inferior, so you're kind of looking at why is she favourite. But Laurel was disappointing at Newbury and the Lock-ins. I mean, the OKB was too much too soon for her, but still, it did kind of expose limitations at a decent level. I thought she still can improve in her trained by Gosling and ridden by Frankie Dettori. There's every chance that there's going to be support for her and she'll go off favourite and fulfil a promise. But Prosperous Voyage, I don't think she's been as good as in this season as she was last season early on. I think Epsom, winning a race she was entitled to win, made a slightly heavy weather of it, totally missed the start, which would be unlike her. And also William be back on board, not a negative, but I mean Frankie Dettori was on board before, so and I ask it maybe not totally for her. She's winning around Epsom and ran quite well in the Guineas last year, so I wouldn't be overly convinced by it, even though those are the two that are in figures that should be winning this. But the market's pointed towards Jumbly. I don't think there's much inspiration in behind that field. It's not a great price, but I think she's the most likely to step forward here and run a race, and she might just out-battle these.
We'll move into the Queen's Vase for 3-year-olds. That's going to be on the Wednesday at 25-6. Gregory for the Goslings has looked really good first 2 runs this season. You've got Tower of London, Arrest, Castle Way, Circle of Fire, Chess Piece, kind of 10-1 bar. What do we think of Gregory? 5-2. Do you think he's entitled to be that price?
This was a surprise entry. And I think this is one of the kind of Frankie factors that you can get involved with, because Rab Havlin went off him at Goodwood and say a 1 mile 6. If you like him for this, I would double him up for the Ledger. You get about 35 to 1. If this is their Ledger horse, 2 unbeaten, throw them in here in a Group 2. It's a race that's normally a useful pointer towards St Ledger. I don't think Augusta Rodin will go down the 1 mile 6 road. I think it's a bit better than that. I think it's probably going to campaign him over middle distances. He'll probably stay there. The third, White Birch, would be at more of a Ledger angle out of the Derby. He's still got stalls issues though, hasn't he? He's maybe a bit quirky, a bit temperamental. Gregory's about 9s. I think people have cottoned on. They say that, well, this in the Ledger and it's another classic for Frankie Dettori and a really good stayer. It's also just changed ownership recently as well. So I think there's a bit of significance behind that, because this isn't deep apart from that. I mean, Arrest does have an entry that I don't think he's going to take up, but I mean, he is there. He'd be on figures, he'd be kind of bang there. The rest are kind of, progressing through the ranks, high 90s, early 100s. And Gregory's already rated 110. That's arguably higher. I mean, when Logician won a Ledger, he'd only get you fined like £7-10 over the course of the season to really kind of win a Ledger, maybe even 4 or 6 on top of that to kind of be a proper contender. So he's a sleeper that's come outside classic company, but he's highly progressive, and 10 to 3 might not be bad here, because Chess Piece is good for the Criswards, but he's rated 101. The £9 to fine, and him Continuous was very disappointing in France. I doubt he would come here. The only Ian O'Brien horse that I kind of liked was Peking Opera at 12s. I do think that horse he might be kind of coming through, and he does look a Queen of Anne's type 1 mile 6. He'd be the HB threat at 12s for me, but I do think the favourites, this is an interesting route that's probably worth pursuing for punters.
Yep. Right behind you on that. I think Gregory could be a really good run here. Thursday, Norfolk Stakes. I know you're very keen on Elite Status. You look really good first time out. American Rascal is likely to come over for Wesley Ward, so this could be a good dust-up between two really promising 2-year-olds.
It does. Elite Status was wildly impressive at Sandown, the best juvenile performance so far. And in behind, doesn't look overly strong. There will be progressive types in there that will catch you out and will run well. American Rascal looks one of Wesley Ward's better horses coming over. He has said that it's not quite on a par with his best, but he is coming to hand quite well. So but I mean, if Elite States is drawn anywhere near the American horse, he just track him and pop out and hopefully win. I don't think he'll get much shorter on the day. So I think he's probably one of the good ones to put in multiples. Yeah.
Another horse that could be put on multiples is the horse in the Ribblesdale. It's looking like Al Asaifa could be lining up in the Ribblesdale. Was 8 to 11, really, really good at Goodwood last time. That's very short for any horse at Royal Ascot. Do you think she's justifiable?
I think so. It's too quick for the kind of the main players in the Oaks to kind of come here. It's a good opportunity, isn't it? It didn't look the best race beforehand. She was good at Goodwood. This will be a bit better. John Gosling will have a few options as well to maybe kind of try and take her on. Just have to wait and see that she will definitely be supplemented. We'll know by the close of play today. 8 to 11, possibly. I mean, Blue Stocking's an interesting one.
Yeah, that was the one I was leaning towards until I saw this price
of Rafe Beckett's. That might push it out to 6s to 7s maybe.
Yeah.
That makes it each way option or an option maybe without the favourite. Village Voice for Jessica Harrington's isn't too bad either at 20s, I would say. But Lumia Rock isn't bad either. Warm Heart isn't bad either of the Irish kind of challenge. There's no superstar here, and the supplemented horses, suggesting that she might well be. If she is, she'll probably win. But it's a quick enough kind of. It's not been the plan, and it's a quick enough kind of rerun. So I'm not a big fan of supplementing horses. There's a reason why they've not been entered initially.
We'll move into the Friday. We've got the Albany Stakes. I have to be honest and say Jabara 7 to 2, Carla's Way 4 to 1, Soprano 4 to 1. I really like Navis at Island at 6-1. Got a really good write up the other day by Kevin Blake. I think 6-1 looked really good last time out. She was probably a bit unlucky not to be closer to the pace. I think the step up will do no harm. 6-1 could be a good price for me.
Yeah, this is competitive, very competitive. Jabara and Soprano both look good. Carla's Way's form is being vindicated left, right, and centre. And Porta Fortuna, for Donna O'Brien, run really well last 8 in the same race that Meditate won before she took out the Albany. And I think there's a lot more to come from her. I would probably lean towards Porta Fortuna at 6s at the moment. But again, this is very competitive, very tightly knitted. Some horses that were in the Queen Mary might come here instead. 1-6 furlongs, Midnight Affair still in there, for instance. Signings always is interesting, apparently from America. There's good word from that. Could go Queen Mary, I suppose, but there's a lot of options here at the moment. I'd probably report a Fortuna.
Interesting. We'll move into Friday. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a really interesting gamble on the horse that was second in the Derby. King of Steel is now 11-8. It was 6-1 during the week. That to me is very short.
It is, but again, you're kind of like Ribblesdale territory here. It's kind of it's the Oaks after the Oaks. It's the Derby after the Derby, and it's going to be a slightly lesser race. Though it's the opposition that you're looking at. You look Circle of Fire, maybe Castle Way, Continuous, All There, Canberra Legends. It's a pretty uninspiring field that he's got to beat, and he looks like he'd be able to. Like he missed his engagement at York at the start, and coming here, he shaped as if he was going to run quite well. And Roger Varian's obviously happy with him to take his chance here. As long as he runs to that level again, I think he's probably good enough to win this.
Yeah, I think he probably could. I mean, there's not a lot of traction. I just think a short price like that, I don't think he was well fancied for the Derby. So
it's quite short. Yeah, he was 66s, but I mean, we didn't know enough about him. He had like a couple of runs and he rated 95 and of Ammo Racing. It's not alien for a big massive price to run well, but it didn't smack to me as like a flash in the pan. Like it was a weak race and they all stole a march from at the front. It was truly run. The best horse won, and the second best horse I think was a clear second. So yeah, Alder of Doric O'Brien's is tentatively interesting, given that Chester went wrong for him because the ground went against him a little bit, but he was trapped in behind. I think better ground, a more conventional track. I think you can see him stepping up. I think 10-1 for him each way is probably a reasonable each way shout.
Saturday, the Hardwick, we've got Hukum, who beat Desert Crown and reappearances 7-4. You've got Free Wind at 11-4. Pile Driver 6-1. Deauville Legend 7s. What do you think of Hukum here? I think he's good value at 7-4.
It's all about ground watch. If it's too fast, he won't run. But if he builds on what he did against Desert Crown, yeah, he's a clear favourite here. The market says that. Free Winds at high class form. This is probably the toughest kind of grade that he's been in. Pile Driver's interesting coming back. Maybe the King George. He's entitled to need this reappearance run. So yeah, hard to look over Hookham too much in a race like this. I'd rather have seen Broome run here than. I mean, he won this last year pretty impressively. I think he should be in this than in the Gold Cup. They're trying to stretch him out. I think 2 miles is obviously fine for him, but I think 2.5 is a bit far. I'd have preferred to see him run here, but they've got changing of the guard. Doesn't look. He's not the same horse as Hookham would be. So, and if he defects, Free Wind's probably the right kind of favourite because he's an untapped potential and he's a hard horse to get right. He can have like soundness problems, but he's very high class in his day, and a bit like Hookham is very high class in his day as well. But Hookham's got the better form, just maybe a bit more reliable, and it's not a great price to dive into right now. But I don't think the race is going to get much better coming into defection mode. So as long as the ground's okay, as long as it's not too fast for him, he'll do himself justice, and yeah, he should win.
Right, let's move into some kind of handicap bets, other bets. I've got one or two I'm very keen on bring on the night in the Ascot Stakes. Willie Mullins could have 2 winners on the first day. It's not Cheltenham, it's Royal Ascot. He could potentially send it over, bring on the night, and looks to be sending over Vauban. I think they've both got really good chances. Really liked the performance of Johannes Brames. I don't know where he's going to go, but he could go for the Windsor Castle. And if he goes for the Windsor Castle, I think 6-1 could be a good price. And other than that, I'm going to pass the floor on to you because I don't know enough about the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You'll probably know better than me because I'm kind of stuck for other options here, to be honest.
Yeah, even then, I mean, it's hard to kind of gauge betting wise.
Yeah.
Bring on the Night will stay. Whether he should be a 5-2 shot, I've been beating it last year. I'm not too sure, but the horse that did beat him was Coltrane, who's running the Ascot Gold Cup. So you're looking at potential as a potential Gold Cup horse here. There might not be. It might be an easy race from 5-2 is a bit short. Law of the Sea is worth a mention at 14s. He liked quick ground. The Ian Williams yard. He was very unlucky in the Chester Cup where the ground was totally against him. Got touched off last time at Haydock, but probably needed that over a trip that was a bit short. He will get 2.5 miles. I think 14-1, even if it's clipped into 10s, he'll get extra places in the day because it looks like a quite busy race. Also in the first day in the Wolferton, Buckaroo looks quite a decent price at 7s. Given that he was just touched off in a French Group 1 beforehand, now he might need it a bit softer, but that was a massive improvement from what he's kind of tended to offer, and even his old form would have been around listed level, Group 3 level before then. So that suggested to me my each way lay would be sagging that. I think this Royal kind of, I mean, he touched off in a handicap last year. He finds ways to get beat, and he's going up in grade here, going up in trip, and just because it's a King's horse and Gosson and Dettori, I think he's been criminally overbet here. 13-2, I think he should be about. I mean, Royal Champion Fox's Tails are 20-1. He should be in that bracket, to be honest with this. He's a ridiculous price. Do like Vauban out of the Mullins pair the most. He's completely chucked in off a low mark in the 100s, given his 150 form and the flat. He's a higher class horse than Bring On the Night over jumps. He's probably higher class in the flat. He might need a bit of cutting the ground. That's the question mark. He might be quick, but he's going back in trip, so he does have pace, as we've seen. 2 mile days, he probably wouldn't get the trip that Bring On the Night does in the way he does as a stayer. So and I think it's a much weaker race than the Ascot Stakes in behind, I think. So I would rather have him at a similar price to Bring On the Night, for instance. Wednesday, Kensington Palace, not enough to go on. The Royal Hunt Cup, there's been a big gamble in Perotto from 14s to 7s. To Roger varying quicker ground. It's going to suit Astral King, shaped incredibly well at York when the Kubels was completely unfancying the day. I did back him when he was third, and he was very unlucky not to win. He's placed in this numerous times before. If you're having an each way handicap multi, him at 10s, he'd be pretty solid to put in there. I would think. Windsor Castle, I do quite like the favourite. In Barnwell Boy, if Ocean Murphy does keep the ride, because that was a very good initial impression, and that's a significant early jockey booking for the Johnsons to kind of have a go at. And that yard are flying at the moment. The Charlie Johnson yard, they're going really well this month. Winners left, right, and centre. It does interest me, but I would rather kind of have a deeper look at the field there. So that's probably about it. I mean, in the Wokingham on the Saturday, I'm a bigger Ratio fan. I don't know his favourite, but I do think he's a really good horse. It's this progressive kind of Charlie Hills sprinter that's going through the ranks. It didn't quite go his way last year, but he does handle quick ground. An £8 hike is a bit big, but you'd be waiting to see if William Buick's and jocked up again, and that should have a green light. 8s, I would say if you can get to 5, 11-2, and it'll be a bit skinny, but 8s for a Wokingham wouldn't be too bad. In the Britannia, look out for judgment trained horses, and in the Sandringham handicap, look out for Charlie Fellows horses and fillies that get in really low the handicap. They normally do quite well.
Brilliant. We'll just ask you for your nap of the week before we wrap up. I'm strong. Kind of think Navis Island each way could potentially be my best bet. Navis Island and My Prospero, probably an each way double for me. What about yourself?
Subjective is each way in the Gold Cup, and Vauban if he runs on the Copper Horse.
Brilliant. Calum, it's been an absolute pleasure. Best of luck next week at Royal Ascot, and then, as always, it's a pleasure.
Yep, thanks again.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, folks. Enjoy Royal Ascot. Please gamble responsibly, and we'll see you for the next episode of The Betting Ring very soon. Cheers.